I still remember the exact shade of marble beneath my knees that morning, pearl white with veins of gray, cold enough to seep through my uniform as I scrubbed. The executive floor of Whitmore Industries gleamed like a monument to wealth I'd never touch, and I was just another invisible hand keeping it pristine. "Make sure you get the corners, Amara." Mrs. Pemberton's voice cut through the early morning quiet. The head of facilities stood over me, her designer heels clicking impatiently. "Mr. Whitmore has important clients coming today." I didn't look up. After 2 years of cleaning these offices, I'd learned that eye contact was a luxury people like me couldn't afford. "Yes, ma'am." The elevator chimed, and I heard her sharp intake of breath. "He's early," she hissed, then louder. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore." I kept scrubbing, making myself smaller, but I could feel his presence fill the space. Alexander Whitmore, 35, inherited his father's empire at 28, and according to the tabloids I'd glimpsed in the break room trash, one of New York's most eligible bachelors. "Morning, Helen." His voice was different from what I'd expected, warmer, without the edge of contempt most executives carried. "And good morning to you, too." It took me a moment to realize he was talking to me. I glanced up, meeting gray eyes that held something I hadn't seen from anyone on this floor. Acknowledgement. Not just of my presence, but of my humanity. "Good morning, sir," I managed, then quickly returned to my work. "You're new to this floor?" he asked. Mrs. Pemberton answered for me. "Amara's been with us 2 years. Very thorough in her work." The pause before thorough carried weight, a reminder of my place. "Amara," he repeated, and something about how he said my name made me look up again. "Thank you for taking such good care of everything." Then he was gone, disappeared into his corner office, leaving me with shaking hands and Mrs. Pemberton's suspicious glare. "Don't get ideas," she warned. "Men like him don't really see women like you. He's just being polite. Women like me." She didn't need to elaborate. Poor, black, invisible. But she was wrong about one thing. He did see me. Over the next weeks, Alexander Whitmore arrived early every morning. Always with a greeting, always using my name. Small talk evolved into actual conversations. He'd ask about my weekend, remember details I'd mentioned. When I told him I was taking night classes in accounting, he seemed genuinely interested. "That's ambitious," he said one morning, leaning against the doorframe of his office while I organized the conference room. "What made you choose accounting?" I hesitated, unused to anyone here caring about my aspirations. "Numbers don't lie, sir. They don't judge. They just are." Something shifted in his expression. "Unlike people." I didn't say that. "You didn't have to." He studied me with those storm gray eyes. "You're wasted on this floor, Amara. Your mind, I can see it working when you think no one's watching. The way you reorganized the supply system, how you caught that error in the maintenance billing last month." My breath caught. "You noticed that?" "I notice a lot of things." He paused. "There's an opening in accounting. Entry level, but with your night school credits, you'd qualify. Interested?" The world tilted. "Mr. Whitmore, are you serious?" "Completely. Send me your resume. I'll make sure it gets to the right people." That afternoon, the whispers started. The other cleaning staff avoided me. The secretaries suddenly found reasons to walk past while I worked. Their conversations deliberately loud. "Can you imagine?" Brittany from reception stage whispered to her friend. "She probably thinks she has a chance with him. Poor thing doesn't realize he's just being charitable. You know how these rich liberals are. Need their token diversity hire to feel good about themselves." I kept my head down, fingers steady as I typed my resume on the ancient computer in the break room during lunch. Let them talk. I'd heard worse. The interview came a week later. I wore my only suit, bought secondhand but pressed perfectly. The panel of 3 white executives barely looked at me as they fired questions. I answered each one precisely. My night school training serving me well. "Your credentials are adequate," Mr. Harrison, the CFO, said, the word adequate dripping with skepticism. "But this position requires a certain presentation, client-facing work. You understand?" I understood perfectly. My skin was wrong. My hair, pulled back in a professional bun, was wrong. My entire existence in their space was wrong. I understand the position requires professional presentation and expertise. I have both. His lips thinned. We'll be in touch. They weren't. 2 weeks passed. I saw the position filled by Bradley, fresh out of college with his father's connections and half my qualifications. Alexander noticed my mood that week. You didn't get it. Not a question. I focused on wiping down his desk. It was a long shot anyway. It wasn't. His voice carried an edge I'd never heard. You were the most qualified candidate. Mr. Whitmore, I started, but he cut me off. Alexander. When it's just us, call me Alexander. He moved closer and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne and something uniquely him. And you were robbed. We both know why. This was dangerous territory. It doesn't matter. It does to me. His hand almost touched mine on the desk, then pulled back. Have dinner with me. The words hung in the air like a challenge to the universe itself. I stepped back, heart racing. That's not... We can't. Why? You know why. Look at me. Look at you. This isn't a fairy tale. No, he agreed. It's real life, where I'm asking a brilliant, beautiful woman to have dinner with me. The rest is just noise. Beautiful. He'd called me beautiful, not pretty for a black girl or exotic or any of the qualified compliments I'd heard before. Just beautiful. People will talk. They already are. He smiled and it transformed his face. Might as well give them something interesting to say. I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to. But I could already see how this would end. With me humiliated and jobless, another cautionary tale about getting above your station. One dinner, he persisted. Somewhere private if you prefer. Just give me a chance to know you when you're not holding a mop. I'm off at 6, I heard myself say. His smile widened. I'll meet you at the coffee shop on 3rd Street, the one with the red awning. I nodded, already regretting it. Already anticipating it. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. Mrs. Pemberton watched me like a hawk but said nothing. In the bathroom, I overheard 2 secretaries gossiping. She's actually going out with him, one said. Can you believe it? He'll get bored in a week. They always do with their little experiments. I stared at my reflection. Dark skin, brown eyes, features that had never quite fit anyone's standard of beauty. What did Alexander Whitmore see that everyone else missed? At 5:45, I changed in the basement bathroom, trading my uniform for jeans and a simple blouse. My hands shook as I applied lip gloss. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. Alexander sat in a corner booth, having traded his suit for jeans and a sweater. He looked younger, more approachable, and devastatingly handsome. You came, he said, standing as I approached. You sound surprised. Hopeful, he corrected. I was hopeful. We talked for 3 hours, about books, travel dreams, family. He told me about losing his mother young, the pressure of inheriting his father's company. I shared stories of growing up in Oakland, my grandmother's strength, the teacher who convinced me I was smart enough for college. Why accounting, he asked again. This time I told him the truth. When you're poor, really poor, you learn to count everything. Every dollar, every opportunity, every slight. Numbers became my language. They make sense when nothing else does. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. You make sense to me. It would have been easy to dismiss as a line, but his eyes held such sincerity that I believed him. This is complicated, I said. The best things usually are. We left together, and he walked me to my subway stop. Under the fluorescent lights, reality crept back in. Tomorrow, I'd be the cleaning lady again. He'd be the untouchable executive. This, whatever this was, couldn't exist in daylight. I want to see you again, he said. Alexander, please, give us a chance. I thought about Mrs. Pemberton's warning, the secretary's gossip, the interview panel's dismissal. Then I thought about how he said my name, how he saw through my invisibility. Okay, I whispered. He smiled and squeezed my hand before letting go. Tomorrow? I work tomorrow. After? I nodded, already knowing I was walking into something that would either transform me or destroy me. Maybe both. 3 weeks into whatever we were doing, the atmosphere at Whitmore Industries had become Arctic. I'd arrived to find my supplies mysteriously missing, my time card accidentally unsigned, my work redone by others who claimed I'd missed spots that gleamed. Alexander and I had been careful. Dinners in quiet restaurants in Brooklyn, walks in parks where his circle never ventured, conversations that stretched until dawn in his apartment while the city slept. But careful wasn't enough when everyone was watching. "Someone complained about you," Mrs. Pemberton announced one morning, cornering me in the supply closet. "Said you've been inappropriate with Mr. Whitmore." My hand stilled on the bottles of cleaner. Inappropriate how? Flirting, making advances. Her smile was sharp. "Helena from accounting says she saw you touch his hand last Tuesday." Last Tuesday, when I'd handed him a file he'd dropped. A 2-second interaction twisted into something salacious. That's not what happened. It doesn't matter what happened. It matters what people see. She leaned in close enough that I could smell her coffee breath. "End it now, whatever you think you have with him, or I'll have to report this to HR. You know what that means. Termination, no references, no chance at another corporate job." That evening, Alexander noticed my distance immediately. We sat in his apartment, a penthouse that cost more than I'd make in a lifetime, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him about Mrs. Pemberton's threat. "What's wrong?" He pulled me closer on the couch, and I let myself lean into his warmth for just a moment. "Your world doesn't want me in it," I said finally. "I want you in it." That's not enough. I sat up, creating distance. "Do you know what they call me when you're not around? Your phase, your charity case, your exotic experiment." His jaw clenched. "Who said that?" "Everyone. Everyone says it, thinks it, believes it." I stood, pacing to the window. Below, Manhattan glittered, beautiful and untouchable. "Your CFO? Harrison?" He told Bradley to watch out for aggressive women trying to sleep their way up. He was looking right at me when he said it. "I'll fire him." "No. You won't. Because then you'll have to fire half your company." I turned to face him. "This is bigger than us, Alexander. It's systematic. It's in the walls of that building." He crossed to me, taking my hands. "Then we'll tear down the walls." "You can't. Watch me." His eyes blazed with determination. "I've been documenting everything. Every racist comment, every discriminatory practice, every time someone qualified like you gets passed over for someone connected like Bradley." My breath caught. Why? Because I was complicit before. I saw it happening and did nothing because it was easier. Then I met you, and easy stopped being enough. He cupped my face gently. "You changed me, Amara, made me see what I was choosing not to see." I wanted to believe him, but that night everything shattered. My phone rang at 2 a.m. My sister panicked. "Amara, you need to see this." Someone had posted photos online. Alexander and me at dinner, carefully cropped to look intimate. The comments were brutal. "Gold digger. She's definitely pregnant, trying to trap him." Affirmative action hiring at its finest. Poor Alex, she probably threatened discrimination if he didn't date her. But the worst was from an anonymous account with insider details. She was stealing from the supply closet. That's how she got his attention. He caught her and she seduced him to keep quiet. Lies. All lies. But lies with enough detail to sound credible. By morning, it had reached the New York social blogs. "Whitmore heirs questionable choice," read one headline. Another, "From mop to top, the cleaning lady's calculated climb." I called in sick, unable to face the building. Alexander showed up at my apartment in Queens an hour later. "I'm handling it," he said, pulling me into his arms despite my resistance. "How? How do you handle something like this?" I was crying, angry at myself for the tears. "They've made me exactly what they always said I was, a scandal, a liability, something dirty you need to clean up." "No." His voice was fierce. "You're the woman I love." The words hung between us. Love. He'd said love. You can't. I do. I love your strength, your intelligence, your integrity. I love how you see through everyone's facades, including mine. He tilted my chin up. I love you, Amara. And I'm not letting them drive you away. Your father called, didn't he? Alexander's silence was answer enough. Richard Whitmore, patriarch of the family empire, had opinions about his son's choice. He threatened to remove me as CEO if I don't handle the situation appropriately, Alexander admitted. My heart sank. So it's over? No. I told him to go to hell. He laughed bitterly. 40 years of building his legacy, and he's willing to destroy it over who I love? Then it's not a legacy worth preserving. Alexander, you can't throw away everything for you. Watch me. He pulled out his phone, showing me an email. I've already sent this to the board. Either they address the culture of discrimination at Whitmore Industries, or I walk. And I'm taking half the executive team with me, the ones who actually have integrity. I read the email. Stunned. He'd laid out everything. The harassment I'd faced, the systemic racism, the toxic culture. He'd put his name, his reputation, his future on the line. They'll destroy you, I whispered. Maybe, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. He set the phone aside, taking my hands again. I meant what I said about tearing down walls, but I need to know, are you with me? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Mrs. Pemberton. You're fired, she said without preamble. Security found evidence of theft. We'll be pressing charges unless you sign an agreement never to contact Mr. Whitmore again, and never to speak about your time at the company. What evidence? My voice was steady despite my racing heart. Cleaning supplies in your locker, product that went missing last month. Product I'd never touched. A setup, clean and simple. I see. You have 1 hour to decide. Sign or we prosecute. She hung up. Alexander had heard everything, his face darkening with each word. They planted it, I said unnecessarily. I know. He was already typing on his phone. But they didn't count on something. What? Me having cameras installed in the supply areas last month, hidden ones after I noticed discrepancies. He showed me his screen, footage of Bradley placing bottles in my locker yesterday afternoon. I was trying to catch general theft. Instead, I caught conspiracy. The video was clear, damning. Bradley and 2 others, laughing as they planted the evidence. We can fight this, Alexander said. Really fight it. But it'll get ugly. They'll come after you harder. The media, the lawyers, everyone. I need you to know what you're walking into. I thought about my grandmother, who'd cleaned houses her whole life and died with nothing to show for it but pride. I thought about every door closed in my face, every opportunity denied, every time I'd been told to be grateful for scraps. Then I thought about Alexander, willing to lose everything rather than lose me. I'm not signing anything, I said. And I'm not running. They want to fight? They've got one. He kissed me then, fierce and desperate and full of promise. Together? He asked. Together. My phone buzzed with another call. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. Miss Johnson? This is Patricia Williams from the New York Tribune. I received some interesting documentation about discrimination at Whitmore Industries. I'd love to hear your side of the story. I looked at Alexander, who shrugged innocently. I might have sent some files to a few journalists I trust. You're really going nuclear, aren't you? They went after you. That made it nuclear. His voice softened. But this is your story to tell or not tell. Your choice. My choice. When had I ever really had one of those? Miss Johnson? The journalist prompted. I'll meet with you, I heard myself say. Tomorrow. And Ms. Williams? Bring your best recorder. This is going to be a long story. The boardroom at Whitmore Industries had never seen anything like this. 48 hours after my interview with the Tribune, the story had exploded across every major outlet. Systemic racism at corporate giant dominated headlines. The security footage of Bradley planting evidence had gone viral. 3 more employees had come forward with their own stories. Now, I sat at the polished table where I'd once scrubbed coffee stains, facing the board of directors. Alexander beside me, a team of lawyers behind us, and across from us, Richard Whitmore himself, a man who looked like an older, crueler version of his son. "This is extortion," Richard spat, his face purple with rage. "You're using your relationship with my son to— To what?" I interrupted, my voice calm despite my racing heart. "To expose the truth? To demand accountability?" "You're nobody," Helena from accounting hissed from her seat. "A cleaning lady who got lucky." I smiled, pulling out a folder. "Actually, Helena, I'm the cleaning lady who documented everything, including the books you've been doctoring for the past 18 months. The room went silent. Helena's face drained of color. "See, when you're invisible, people say things around you, do things." I opened the folder, spreading out printed emails, photos of documents, transcripts, like discussing how to skim from the charity fund at last year's Christmas party. "I was serving drinks, you didn't even notice me." That's illegal recording." "No, it's not." One of our lawyers spoke up. "New York is a one-party consent state. Miss Johnson was part of the conversation by being in the room. Everything is admissible." I continued pulling out documents. Bradley's cocaine habit, funded by petty cash. Harrison's affair with his assistant using company credit cards for hotels. Mrs. Pemberton's brother's cleaning supply company charging triple market rate because she gets kickbacks. Each revelation landed like a bomb, but I saved the best for last. "And Richard Whitmore." I met his eyes steadily. "Your off-the-books accounts. The ones you use to pay for silence when executives get inappropriate with staff. 23 payoffs in 5 years. All to women of color. All to make problems disappear." Richard's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. The board members shifted uncomfortably, some pulling out phones, probably calling their own lawyers. "Here's what's going to happen." Alexander stood, commanding the room. "Complete restructuring. Richard steps down. Harrison, Helena, Pemberton, Bradley, all gone. We implement real diversity initiatives, not the cosmetic ones. And we establish a fund for employees who faced discrimination, starting with a full scholarship program for night school students." "This is my company," Richard started. "Was," Alexander corrected. "The board already voted, didn't you?" He looked around the table. Several members nodded reluctantly. Amazing how quickly they moved once the FBI mentioned potential RICO charges for the systemic fraud. "FBI?" I glanced at Alexander, who gave me a small smile. He'd really thought of everything. "You planned this," Richard said, staring at his son with something like bewildered respect. "You've been planning this for months. Since the day they denied Amara the accounting position, actually." Alexander's hand found mine under the table. I realized then that the rot went to the core. The only way to save the company was to expose it all. "You destroyed us for her?" Helena's voice cracked. "No," I said, standing. "You destroyed yourselves. Every racist comment, every discriminatory action, every time you chose cruelty over humanity. I just kept receipts." The next hour was chaos. Lawyers negotiating, board members arguing, Richard threatening and pleading in turns. Through it all, Alexander and I remained steady, united. Finally, the deal was struck. Richard would retire quietly. The others would resign with no severance. The company would undergo a complete overhaul, with Alexander as CEO and a new board committed to real change. And there would be compensation, not just for me, but for all the employees who'd been wronged. As we walked out, Mrs. Pemberton blocked our path, tears streaming down her face. "I'll be ruined," she said. "No one will hire me." "The way no one would hire me after you spread lies about theft?" I asked quietly. "The difference is, I was innocent." "You're not." She flinched and stepped aside. In the elevator, Alexander pulled me close. "You were magnificent," he murmured against my hair. I was terrified. "That makes it even more magnificent." The elevator opened to the lobby where a crowd of employees had gathered. For a moment, my heart stopped. Were they here to protest? To support the old regime? Then they started clapping. Maria from the night cleaning crew called out, Thank you, Amara. Others joined in, sharing their own stories, their gratitude, their hope for real change. Among them, I spotted Bradley being escorted out by security, his box of belongings in hand. He caught my eye and sneered. You think you've won? You're still just a what? Alexander stepped forward, and Bradley actually stepped back. Finish that sentence, please. Give me a reason. Bradley slunk away, and I touched Alexander's arm. He's not worth it. No, but you are. 6 months later, I stood in that same boardroom, but everything was different. The table was filled with new faces, diverse faces, talented people who'd been overlooked before. I wasn't cleaning it. I was running the meeting as the new Chief Diversity Officer, a position created specifically to ensure the mistakes of the past never repeated. Alexander watched from his seat, pride evident in his eyes. We'd faced death threats, social media harassment, and attempts to sabotage the new structure. But we'd also received support from unexpected places, other companies wanting to learn from our transformation, employees who'd found their voices, journalists who kept the story alive. The scholarship program has its first graduates, I announced, showing the presentation. 15 employees who've completed their degrees while working. 3 are moving into management positions. Applause filled the room. Real applause, not the performative kind I'd witnessed before. After the meeting, Alexander and I stood at the window where I'd once stared at the city that seemed so untouchable. Any regrets? He asked, arms wrapped around me from behind. I thought about the journey, the pain, the humiliation, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep wondering if I was strong enough. No, I said finally. Every moment led us here. Even the hard ones? Especially those. They showed me who I really am, who we really are. He turned me to face him, and I saw the ring box in his hand before he even knelt. Amara Johnson, he said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. You've taught me that love isn't just about feeling. It's about fighting for what's right, standing up when it's hard, and never letting anyone dim your light. Will you marry me? I thought about that first morning, scrubbing floors while the world walked over me. I thought about every person who told me to know my place, to be grateful for scraps, to never dream beyond my station. Yes, I said, pulling him up for a kiss. Yes to all of it. The news of our engagement brought another wave of media attention, but this time, we controlled the narrative. We used every interview to highlight the changes at Whitmore Industries, the success of the diversity programs, the other companies following our lead. Our wedding was small, intimate. My grandmother would have loved it. Alexander's father didn't attend, but his mother's relatives did, embracing me with warmth that healed wounds I didn't know I still carried. In my vows, I said, you saw me when I was invisible. You stood with me when the world stood against us. You chose love over legacy, truth over comfort. You didn't save me. You empowered me to save myself. In his, Alexander said, you opened my eyes to the world I was complicit in maintaining. You showed me that real strength isn't in power or money, but in integrity and courage. You didn't just change my life, you changed my soul. 3 years later, Whitmore Industries was recognized as one of the most diverse and inclusive companies in America. The cleaning staff had full benefits and tuition reimbursement. The executive team looked like America, not just one narrow slice of it. I kept one photo on my desk, me in my cleaning uniform, taken secretly by a sympathetic colleague during my first week. A reminder of where I'd been and how far we'd all come. Sometimes young women of color would visit my office seeking advice, mentorship, hope. I'd tell them my story, but more importantly, I'd tell them theirs was waiting to be written. The world will try to make you small, I'd say. Your job is to remember you were born to take up space. One day, a young black woman from the cleaning staff knocked on my door, reminding me so much of myself it took my breath away. Mrs. Whitmore, she said nervously, I wanted to thank you for everything, for showing us it's possible. What's your name? I asked. Destiny. I smiled. Destiny, have you ever thought about night school? There's a program. And so it continued. Each one, teach one, each victory opening the door for another. Because the truth I'd learned wasn't just that love could conquer prejudice, or that documentation could topple systems. It was that change, real change, happened when someone remembered what it was like to be invisible and decided that no one else should have to be. The revolution hadn't been televised. It had been whispered in supply closets, documented in secret files, and finally shouted from boardrooms. And it had begun with a simple truth. I was never just the cleaning lady. I was always the storm they never saw coming.